Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Tuesdays with Story. And we have a little announcement to make. We are now officially the podcast that will move to Rumble for $100 million.
Yeah, so if Joe Rogan doesn't pan out, we're happy to take that action.
Yes. Yes. I'm Daniel Parker, and I am the writer and creator on Angel's Awakening, as well as my new comic book called Guardian Angel, which the mailing list is live. And of course, you saw the trailer for it at the start of the show. But yeah, its link is in the description down below. If you sign up for the mailing list, you'll get access to a secret tier, and the first 50 people to sign up will receive a free art print when you back a physical tier. Still a few slots left on that, so if you haven't signed up for it yet, you still have a chance to get that art print.
I know I am.
Yeah. And hey, D Rhino, good to see you. And of course, joining me as always is my partner in crime here.
Yep. Oh, hey, you got the. Damn it! I'm used to being invisible.
Yeah.
You have months more practice than me. Hey, it's a Darth Bobcat, also known as DB Fastbinder, author of Confessions, the Magpie Wizard. I will totally sell out and only go for 25 million if you don't want Daniel. Blink twice, Rumble. DM me, Rumble. All right. So anyways, we're up to 3 books on Amazon. Book 5 is currently posting on the free websites. And actually, request if you've purchased book 1 at some point in the past, if I'm 1 rating away and interesting things happen when you have 20 ratings on Amazon, as far as promotions and stuff. So heck, even if you hated it and rated it 1 star, that would help. Interesting thing, you're allowed to ask for reviews. You aren't allowed to ask for good reviews. It's apparently it's a quirk of the Amazon system. People have gotten in trouble for, like, in the back of their books going, and remember, 5-star reviews are the lifeblood of any good author.
Oh.
Right. I guess it's because you want the review to actually, be somewhat on point.
Yeah. So can't be like Uber.
Yeah.
All right. Well, link to Magpie Wizards in the description down below, as well as to the Royal Road of Saga of the Storm Wizard, which is a spinoff of Magpie Wizard, featuring Rose Cooper, and as well as DB's Patreon. So
I always knew that your betrayal would come at some point. I'm talking to D Rhino.
Oh, okay.
Said I'll give it 1 star. Just kidding.
All right. Well, so I guess that's enough shilling for tonight.
Yeah.
So
it's very easy to overshill.
Yes.
Also very easy to undershill. Actually, 1 last round of shilling. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, hit the bell notification, and I don't know. Daniel also has a Twitter you could follow.
Yes. Daniel _Parker 63.
Yep.
So yeah. All right. So for this video, we're going to be talking about a nice, neat little subgenre of manga and anime known as Isekai. And although I guess before we start discussing it, we should probably define what an Isekai story is. So,
right.
DB, why don't you give us
a
short definition?
Not everybody is a level 2 weeb and knows that term off the top of their head.
Yeah.
I once had some definitions of your levels of weeb at some point that I made up for myself. I can't remember what it is, but it's like level 1 is you know what a anime or manga is, and you understand when a video game is made in Japan versus not.
Yeah.
Level 2 is a few terms that the nerd community uses. But Isekai is a Japanese phrase that literally means in another world. Now, there have been stories like this for centuries. Examples are Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court, The Chronicles of Narnia, The Goblin. Is it The Goblin? There's like some book from the 1800s that like the first fantasy novel, like The Goblin Prince or something like that, or The
Mm,
Goblin King.
yeah.
That I've heard of, but nobody ever talks about.
Mm,
But the biggest difference is that isekai is a character from technically a character from one reality ends up transported to another, and there are a variety of ways this can happen.
mhm,
Now, usually moving to a different physical location isn't enough. So, like, say, John Carter of Mars, you could make a case that that's an isekai because his soul is spirited away to Mars
mhm.
and he goes into a coma. But say, I don't know, uh, the Apollo space program is not an isekai
Yeah.
because it's a mundane going from point A to point B type thing.
Right.
Um, but isekai gets another something. There's like a few different flavors of it that we can discuss. And like a lot of these anime have a lot of the same kind of structure. So they're
Mhm,
like what things are true in one will be true of another. So we were talking beforehand as we were talking about what are different types, what are different isekai show we've seen, and what are different types. So it's like first off is I can't believe it's not isekai, which is basically a fantasy world that just happens to work on video game logic.
mhm,
Uh, Two major examples are Goblin Slayer and Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon? Both of them are just like totally self contained worlds, no signs that anybody from the real world is showing up there, but you can actually level up and it means you're leveling up and you have classes and roles and things like that to
mhm,
varying degrees. Uh, there's isekai via video game, which is basically you haven't technically left our world, but you're projecting yourself into a video game world that is so realistic as to be indistinguishable from reality or very hard to distinguish from reality. The I almost don't want to even call this an isekai, but it's so prevalent because the one that the series that made isekai the genre that ate Japan for the last 15 years was Sword Art Online, which is that's exactly what it is. It's a virtual game. You put on the helmet. You can't tell that you're wearing a helmet until you log out or don't log out. Spoiler alert for
mhm.
the first season uh, of Sword Art Online.
Yeah.
Then there'd be isekai where you're just transported from. There's isekai where you're basically yourself. Now this can either be you fall into a hole, all the Chronicles of Narnia, or there's the jokes in anime about Truck-kun coming to crash into you and kill you. And what literally happens a lot of times is like God or an angel or somebody shows up and says, "Hey, sorry about that. You weren't really supposed to die right then, but I guess it happened. So as a mulligan, we're going to give you a nice cushy life in another fantasy world with babes."
Yeah.
And then like the fourth kind of subcategory is uh, you die and then you reincarnate as an entirely different person. It can be a different gender, race, species. Like there's one show about where a girl reincarnates as a spider, for example. I think it's even called "So I'm a Spider, So What." Oh, and good examples of the third class where you die in another world are uh, uh, where you die and end up as yourself in another world are Konosuba, like Daniel mentioned,
Mhm.
and in another world with my smartphone. And again, it's like you aren't really anybody different than yourself. You just might have extra talents that you have access to.
Mhm.
Isekai to me into Silent Hill. Um, no, I actually like you, man. I wouldn't do that to you.
No. I would want to be. I think I would want to be isekai'd into Mass Effect before the Reapers show up.
Yeah, I guess if you gave yourself like, there's probably like a 50 to 70 year window there where humanity wasn't at war with anybody, and
Yeah.
And that's actually a good point. Most of this is, it's almost, there's also, most of it is like usually isekai into a fantasy world, but there are series where, and it's rare, where it breaks the mold a bit and it's sci-fi or other ones. Uh,
Berserk.
Isekai into Berserk, huh? D Rhino.
Mm,
There are places you could probably be reasonably happy there.
yeah, yeah.
But so anyway, so you defined our terms, and so like a lot of what we're going to discuss would apply to all of them to different degrees. Also interesting, there is an American equivalent to this called Gamelit, which can either be the first or it's either the second category of you're just playing a video game and are very immersed in it, but it's also a lot of the other two categories. You know, you die and reincarnate in the game as yourself. You die and reincarnate in the game as somebody else. Difference is that in the game lit, it's usually explicitly a video game that the character is familiar with. I can't think of any examples of game lit that don't do that
Mhm,
that I've read, though I've only read like 5 or 6 of those books. Isekai has a bit more wiggle room. Sometimes you do just get it is just a world that happens to very much resemble a video game, and the character never actually heard of it or played it.
mhm,
Which, incidentally, one of the things I keep being shocked that I haven't seen anybody try.
mhm,
Imagine an isekai series where, yeah, like you have a Japanese, I don't know, we'll say a Japanese baseball player, right? Or just somebody who's like, he spends his time outdoors. He's a jock. He doesn't do any of this nerdy video game nonsense, and then he's reincarnated into a world that he just has no concept of.
yeah. Yeah, that would be a good that'd be a good one. Yeah, there'd be a lot of a lot of awkward moments and a lot of you
Right?
know
He'd have to learn a lot about how the actual world works. Somebody would actually have to explain to him what an elf is.
yeah.
It wouldn't just be, oh my gosh, it's a dark elf. So I always wanted a hot dark elf waifu. um, which actually brings us to kind of like what are the underpinnings of this series? Like why of this genre? Why is it so popular? Um, so part of it is that uh, Japanese workplace culture is not necessarily the happiest place to work.
Yeah.
I, um, this I have heard mixed things on if this has changed or not, but for like a generation there, it or two, it was basically you go to the office, you stay at the office. When you're done for the day, you go drink with everybody at the office. You collapse at home,
Mhm.
possibly with a spouse to take care of you, or
Yeah.
possibly not.
Yeah.
Um, and so, if you're living that kind of life and you're just like constantly stressed out and working impossible, but like tasks and goals and everything, the idea of just noping out and getting born somewhere where things are like lighter and easier does I can see the appeal of that.
Mhm.
The same thing for American people too. Like it's also like it almost feels like a cheat code for writing a fantasy series because like Lord of the Rings, like man, Lord of the Rings was born out of J.R.R. Tolkien just wanting somebody to talk to. They joked with these made up languages that he based on Middle English or Old English or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like the poor guy just wanted to invent somebody to talk to in his made up languages. Because I remember hearing stories like where he'd tell his friends and family about it, and they'd be, that's nice, dear.
Yes, that's nice, Randy. Okay.
Yeah. Um, but that's a lot of work to make a fully coherent fantasy world.
No.
Yeah. On the other hand, if you just go, okay, I've played a lot of video games like that, but with enough legally distinctive that legal distinction to not get sued.
Yes. Yeah. It's from a storytelling perspective, it's also a really great way to introduce the audience to the universe.
Mhm.
Because you're introducing the character, because you're introducing the universe and the lore of everything through the character that's been transported one way or another to this world.
That's a great point. It's like most scripts for most series, you're going to have somebody around who doesn't understand what's going on, like your Luke Skywalkers, or if you ever watch a TV show and you notice, oh, why is that one stupid character always around? Like, well, because he needs to have things explained to him,
Hmm.
so the audience knows what's going on. So it is a cheat code to use the fact that, oh, the character is just a gamer boy from Japan
Yeah,
who's now been dropped into his favorite game.
yeah.
And plus, like, D Rhino was just joking about like some bad examples of things to be isekai'd into. And let's be honest, most fictional universes, if you really thought about it and you didn't know you were going to be the hero, would kind of suck to be dropped into.
Hmm.
Like, Berserk. It's an age of warfare, barbarism, and medieval technology,
Yeah.
and it isn't even fun to be Guts in that universe.
Yeah. No.
Much less Rando running around.
Yeah. Or a show we were talking about before we started, Evangelion.
Oh God, man, being isekai'd into Evangelion. Oof.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did actually read a fan fiction way back in the day that was like that. The author himself was like a born again Christian, so he ends up in the Evangelion situation, and the very first question he asks when he set out to fight is, "Hey, why are we calling these guys angels? What do you mean?" I mean, I'm morally, I'm morally not comfortable with the idea of fighting angels because they'd be messengers from God. Uh, well, they're just called angels. It's a code name. Okay, can we change the code name to Hellspawn? What?
Huh?
Can we change the code name to Hellspawn? If it's just a code name, then it can be, it can be anything. No, they're called angels. If you keep insisting that they're called angels, I'm going to have to turn this Evangelion around and help them, right?
Yeah.
Because if you keep insisting they're angels, I'm going to eventually have to conclude they are really angels.
Yes.
And there's a brief silence. Gendo, please attack the Hellspawn.
Please, please, please attack the hellspawn.
uh, I, but anyway, that little divergence.
Yes.
uh, so the so anyways, yeah, Evangelion, that would not be a fun world to be isekai'd into.
Right.
But of
Yeah.
course, like, and it's funny, like, just how broad the isekai genre has become. Because at first, everybody who would get reincarnated was being reincarnated as the hero.
Hmm.
E- Even series like Konosuba that are fundamentally comedies, Kazuma is ultimately, like, if you look at his track record, just because of his presence in management, he has just kept killing dark general after dark general after dark general after dark general. And I've kept up with the series, and around I'm on either 15 or 16. He's talking with one of the generals who's basically going, you know, uh, you've completely destabilized the status quo, right? Like
Yeah.
the barrier around the Dark General's castle is going to break any day now because there's not the Dark Generals to support it. Like, things are changing.
Yes.
Uh, but as you've spread out, you've gotten into more and more niche stuff, like people who become salesmen in the other world, people who run printing shops in the world, people in our world who run restaurants for people in the other world. There are like multiple series about that. So shockingly, uh, it's like, I think that's kind of like the one of the underpinnings of the whole genre is it's that wish fulfillment angle.
Hmm.
Like, I think, what's the old meme? Born too late to explore the world, born too early to explore the stars. It's like there's this, like, lack of excitement in modern life because there's like a feeling of, well, everybody's done everything. Now what?
Yeah. Yeah. It's well, there's only one place to go.
Hmm. Right, exactly. It's well, we can go up, but that's we're probably honestly, you and I are probably we might be able to go into space when we're old men.
Maybe.
Uh,
Mm,
the cost may have come down enough by then,
yeah.
which I'd go once.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, I'd do a William Shatner and just kind of
Yeah.
go up and come back down.
Yeah. If I promise you that if you got to go into space and I didn't, I would not pull a uh, oh, who's the old who is Sulu?
To K.
I would not pull a Takei and try to and just be bitchy on Twitter about it. Like, oh, he was just they're just using him for research. They didn't really like him.
Yeah, right. God, jeez, what a jerk.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Let the man go into space once without it making it about you, you old.
yeah, yeah. Jeez. But yeah, I mean, I can, I can definitely. I mean, I understand the appeal. Let's say I'm finding heaven. Fighting heaven because I thought I was the savior of the world, only to find I'm the demon lord.
I think that's a that's a real title. That's also the weird thing about isekai. So yeah, this is like a light novel and manga trend in general, but it seems to like really like I feel like isekai is like a big chunk of its popularity because so Japanese text, you can communicate a more concentrated amount of meaning in a small number of characters than in English. That's actually a big chunk of why, on the days of NES and SNES, you had more more Japanese games were very text heavy because
Hmm.
like so things you had things like RPGs and adventure games more so because you could for the same amount of bytes of storage space get way more sentences in. So you end up with some of these ridiculously long anime names
Yeah,
and light novel names, but they actually are really helpful for isekai because you know exactly what you're getting into.
yeah,
Like, give me a sec here. So like, come on, come on. I'm trying to find an actual one here. Or I should say, I think most of these series end up being known by a shortened name just because they're so long. It's like
yeah.
Konosuba is like Konosubarashi. Konosuba full name. Here we go.
Yeah,
Yeah. Konosuba, God's blessing on this wonderful world. That one's actually less direct than some of them are.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but like the one that you were talking that you had seen was Reborn as a Villainous, All Paths Lead to Doom.
yeah,
That very succinctly sums up the premise of the show. Reborn as a villainess, and she believes, and like all the paths in the game that she's reborn into will lead to her doom.
yeah, she either dies or she gets exiled.
Right, because she's the villainess of a love story about somebody else.
Hmm.
With the humor of the show being that she has not noticed that because she is not horrible and evil, that she has completely made everyone fall in love with her.
Yes.
If just imagine if somebody had ever actually shown her the movie The Butterfly Effect, she might have actually accounted for that because she's
Yeah.
still at the end of the first season, she's still acting like, oh no, inevitably this is going to go wrong.
Yes.
Uh, and there are like some again, there's like really weird isekai like Reborn as a vending machine. I am not making this up. I remember like 5 years ago, I had actually had this idea to like, okay, what's the most ridiculous isekai I could come up? Well, I've got it in another world with my banjo, and it's got the guy's got this banjo called the Tool of Destruction. Nobody could ever make something more ridiculous than that. And then I saw that vending machine isekai light novel, and I said, you know what? Parody is not the way to go here because they'll always out crazy me.
Yeah. Or so the that one's more ridiculous than the time that time I got reincarnated as slime.
Oh god, that show.
Yeah.
So So kind of talk about, yeah, what's the appeal? It's kind of if you're a writer but you're not super experienced and you don't want to a bard isekai. No,
Okay.
you're kidding me. I actually haven't ever seen one. So in another world, my banjo might have a idea. I always had this idea that it was that the main character ended up with this artifact, and it's never entirely clear if it's actually magical or if it just happens to resemble an artifact that like the world's religion says is going to destroy everything. It's like because he never actually plays it because it's always is his trump card to get out of situations. Like, no, nah, hey man,
Yeah,
want
yeah,
me,
yeah,
want me to strum it?
yeah, yeah. Ding, 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 ding.
Ding, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Uh, or although that would be hard to maintain, it might be easier to have him realize that it's a fake, but he just uses it to play his way through some situations.
Yeah. Yeah.
But or one than the other. But
Yeah.
so it's like you've got the appeal of wish fulfillment. Yeah, it's like some people just don't have a sense of purpose, and so the isekai story like lets them kind of vicariously have that for a
Yeah,
little bit.
the life of a Japanese salaryman is a very hard one.
Indeed.
Mm.
Uh, and also yeah, if you're a writer, it's kind of like we were saying, it's kind of an easy scaffolding because yeah, if people have played an online RPG or even any sort of video game, they get what you're going for,
Mhm.
and you can kind of crib like, okay, dark elves are a common fantasy element, dwarves are a common fantasy element, people know what a golem is, kind of the rules of that,
Mhm.
instead of you having to make it up yourself, and it gives the audience an entry point. So here's why most isekai are awful. So we've talked about at some length about how stories should have like a point or there should be some conflict in this movie.
Mhm.
Uh, it's a great failure that I can't believe that nobody has ever posted that one Family Guy clip with Peter in the tank at the
Yeah.
drive-in.
Yeah, the watching the movie with Bill Pullman and Jeff Daniels.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I made spaghetti. Oh, hey, you know how I was making spaghetti? Yeah, I actually made linguine and said, is that okay? Oh, sure, I'm cool either way. I'm glad we're friends. There's no conflict
Like
in this
this.
movie. And he just fires a shell through the screen. Um,
Uh,
and again, I'm amazed that nobody has posted that clip, or else we would have just played it.
yes.
I guess we could be the change we want to see in the world and try to find it somewhere, but I don't even know what episode it's from. And when I look
Yeah.
that up online, it does like nobody like it's like nobody else remembers that moment
Yeah, it's very odd.
because
Like,
it seems so applicable.
well, you could just I guess we could just Google Family Guy Peter buys a tank, and then we could probably,
Yeah, 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 that might come up. We'll have to play with that later.
yeah.
So anyhow,
Oh, I got a question here. Uh,
so that's one I think let's save that for
for the
the
end.
end.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
So because that's like a good that would either be a good conclusion statement or be something we can elaborate on in the question and answer.
Yeah.
So anyway, so yeah, a lot of the times there's no conflict. Part of it is that wish fulfillment nature of things. Like have you there's like a is an anime that I've seen one episode of called Helpful Fox Girl Senko San,
Mm.
which isn't an isekai, but it's basically a salaryman comes home and there's a fox girl in a Miko shrine maid outfit who makes him dinner and gives him a massage, I think. And she stays over at his place. It's like she's like a helper spirit there to make him feel better. And he's
Hmm.
like, "Oh wow, I can't believe that this cute fox girl is here helping me out." And guess how much conflict or story drive there is? Goose egg.
Kusek and nada.
Right, because it isn't that type of a show. It's there to, you know, be like a little wish fulfillment fantasy. It's a lot of isekai are the same way. Well, what's the driving story of In Another World with My Smartphone? Well, let's see here. He comes into this world, or he dies unexpectedly. He he dies unexpectedly. God says, "Hey, sorry, man, you weren't supposed to die right then, but there was like a clerical error. So, but we can't really bring you back into your world. So wewe're gonna give you this smartphone and put you into a fantasy world. And you think, okay, well, that's kind of an interesting idea. Like if you had like a magical smartphone that never ran out of energy and you could look things up, there's all sorts of things you could do. You'd have to like guard it, to keep bad guys from getting it, and
Mhm.
just access to old books on engineering by whatever that book service that Google used to do. Or it's like if you had
Yeah.
access to like all of Kindle or something, like
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff you could do. But also God says, okay. Also, I'm gonna make you superhumanly strong and fast and durable. And so this world, most people get one magical element out of the four. Guess how many you get? All
All four.
four. All four. So there's no conflict in this movie because he keeps running into waifus, and the only character who actually has any drive, in my opinion, is the 13-year-old princess who kind of wants him for herself, which is already questionable. But he's 16, so it's like, okay, fine, I won't be
Yeah,
too weirded out.
it's still kind of weird, but yeah.
Right, it's one of those things where give it 5 years and it'll seem less weird.
Right. Yeah.
But he just has adventures against generic fantasy monsters. Like it's like somebody's Let's Play.
Hmm.
You watch somebody's Let's Play Final Fantasy 14, and you'll see a similar thing where a guy gets a group, he goes out there, fights a generic monster, wins. Except Final Fantasy 14 is a bad example because there'd be a lot of plot in there.
Yeah.
World of Warcraft, it's like a World of Warcraft thing where it's light on plot. You're just doing an instance with your buddies.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
instead of buddies, say waifus who, and it's funny how every single one of these fantasy worlds it believe in polygamy.
Yeah.
Boy, because if they didn't believe in polygamy, then that there would be like a choice to be made, and that would be conflict, and there's no conflict in this movie.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you can't choose between you can't make a guy choose a waifu.
Yeah, exactly. That would be unfair.
Yeah.
Uh, and so it's like it's just. I think it's because of that. I would almost call it therapeutic. If that's the
Hmm.
right word for it.
Yeah. Yeah, because again, like most isekai, I would imagine that the target demographic are young men.
Right. So either you're a young salaryman or you're an underemployed otaku who,
Hmm.
because my understanding is that Japanese, by the way, Dr. Pepper is zero sugar, not beer. but yeah. But yeah, like my understanding is that Japanese unemployment benefits have historically been pretty easy to get.
Hmm.
I would have to double check that because you know those. Well, we were talking about it before the thing. Like people are so used online to the idea of Japan being weird that you could probably make up any rumor you wanted to about Japan, and until somebody fact checked you on it, it would probably spread pretty far.
Yeah. 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 They got some weird stuff going on over there.
Yep. But maybe overall, i- if you're probably those are probably your two main things. And what do they really want out of life? Well, they'd like to get they like a job that gave them some sense of fulfillment, which is I think why you have isekai about running a printing press. There was another isekai novel I read that was just a one shot where it's like the guy got there was like this kingdom that was having it was like they were starving, and so he got magical powers to generate pizza out of nothing. Like the ingredients would just pop into being, and he learned how to make pizza, and he had a fiance who helped him make the pizza, and he took the pizza around and sold it to people, and everybody like the town was gaining weight again because they had been starving for months because of a bad crop or something. Yeah, it's like there's no conflict.
Like,
There was actually like a very little bit of conflict because I think there was there was someone who was approaching a bad guy who might have wanted to take him for herself, question mark. It's been a couple years since I read it, but that nothing came of it. Now, unlike a lot of these series, it was just a one shot. So in a one shot, it's like, okay, you're just exploring a weird isekai idea.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah.
but it's like every isekai we watch, I would say like that the reincarnated as a villainous one,
Right.
that that actually is like a good example of one, because there is a conflict. She has something she is trying to avoid,
Uh-huh.
and it's like you have new characters who have different reactions to her, that she eventually has to win over. That's like the World War II of isekai conflicts, is or in terms of stakes sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, and that show too, I think it worked well because she's the girl who's the villainess now. I mean, I want to say she was like a middle schooler or early high school,
Mhm.
and she when she's going through her scheming or plotting phase, like she goes through like all her different different like
Oh
chibi
yeah.
forms of her personalities.
Yeah, I like the analytical one, the emotional one, the
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, right, like the yeah, that was a good example. That's how you introduce a little bit of intrigue into the concept.
Mhm.
And then uh, it's like that's again, that's like a yeah. I've joked before that Shield Hero, that Rising of the Shield Hero is the Citizen Kane of Isekai series, because it has a really distinct conflict. It has good characters. That, like, if I were to like rate it as an actual show, it would get like a 7 or 8 out of 10. But on the Isekai bell curve, it's like a 12.
Yeah. Yeah, I still need to finish that one.
Well, new season's coming out, so plenty of
Mm,
time for that.
uh, yeah, so a really weird one. Didn't know what I was getting myself into. I've read two books because saw it was new, and oh boy, it doesn't make me laugh and roll my eyes.
Oh,
Yeah,
which one is that?
yeah, I'm curious about that too.
Let's also talk a little bit about uh, why are there so many authors sitting around generating isekai ideas outside of it being popular? So you mentioned at the start of the podcast that I post my stories on a website called Royal Road.
Mhm. It's called
Okay.
I Am a Behemoth.
I'm a behemoth, an S-ranked monster, but mistaken for a cat. I live as an elf girl's pet.
Wow.
So that one, I'd be curious if it like where it falls on the stakes scale, because if you're like an unbeatable S-ranked monster, you're that's like a One Punch Man type thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I could see somebody pulling off and making interesting, because they've at least added like the interesting they've added the unexpected element that you're super powerful but you don't look it.
Mhm.
But anyway, let's see here. Citizen
Uh,
Kane of Isekai. Where was I going with that?
I'm trying to. Yeah. Why they're popular.
Oh, it's like when you talk about the wish fulfillment aspect. That's right, Royal Road. So
Right.
Royal Road, you can make an account, post anything you like up there. It lives or dies based on how much people like it and share it around. Um, for a lot of these light novels, and this isn't just isekai; it's also just any genre of light novel. And people can read it on the website for free as well. So for a lot of these, imagine if Penguin Random House ran a website like Royal Road, where it's kind of like how Webtoons does web comics, where it's like you have a major company that's doing this website, and you people post stuff there, and imagine if like your big online story, somebody from Penguin Random House can descend from on high and go, "Hey, we want to publish your book."
Hmm.
And that's why you'll often hear references to the web serial version or the web novel version of a light novel having blot difference in places,
Hmm.
because that'll be like the first draft, and then they actually hire a professional editor to look at it and go, okay, so we like this, we don't like this, we think this, this is a plot hole that can be tightened up, and so on,
Mhm.
before it actually hits real publication.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good, yeah, yeah, like you said, that's a good way to gauge interest and obviously marketing, you know.
Right, because you've got something that already has a built-in fan base,
Mhm.
and it seems like those particular websites churn out a lot of isekai shows. What's also really interesting is just it seems like what's popular over there is a bit different than what's popular over here. Because there's this YouTube channel I was following for a while where they would give you the weekly light novel purchase rankings in Japan, and like there's a series it's like called Death March to the World of Rhapsody, which I thought was like a seriously C-level series, is like just consistently a top seller there.
Oh,
I gave up on the third book. You want to know why I gave up on the third book? Well,
why?
first off, because all the girls were underaged and the guy was underaged,
Oh.
and but he was like a salaryman reincarnated in a younger form. And it's like, boy, all these girls do seem to be too interested in me, and I have pent up needs. I'm going to go down to the red light district every so often and release those pent up needs. Like that's seriously a thing that the character was doing, and it's like, hey, author, write everybody to be of age if you're going to, if you want to have that tension.
Yeah.
But also, like end of book 2, he was teleported hundreds of miles away with some of his to save some of his friends. Book 3 is literally just a road trip of going from hundreds of miles away back to the starting town. And I gave up about a third of the way through, and I realized this is just going to be a bunch of random encounters with monsters that are hundreds of levels below him. Because the first thing he did when he arrived at the world was like he was in a world, he was in a game that he had actually programmed, and as like a mercy thing they
Mhm.
had given people like a 3-use screen clear thing for easy mode that people could ignore, and he accidentally used that to wipe out an entire lizardman army, so he was like level 400 before he took 2 steps into the world.
Oh, jeez.
Maybe not 400, but it's like some ridiculously high number
Yeah.
when everyone else is like 20, 30.
Jeez.
So I was like, there's no, like, there's
There.
conflict, but there's no stakes in
And
this
it's,
movie.
yeah.
Like the closest they got to is you could be a little bit worried about the girls he was with, but it's also like, no, not terribly, because this just show doesn't have the balls to actually kill anybody.
All
And it's a
right.
shame because like that of all the light novels I've read with with the isekai element,
Yeah.
that one had like the most world building and attention to detail. And like he had come up with like, oh well, if wyverns existed or flying dragons existed in a world like this, how would people actually like set up defenses to deal with that? And like what's the local agriculture like? What kind of foods do the people eat? Like that's just basic, honestly, basic bitch fantasy writing,
Mm-hmm.
but he actually like did it.
Then, well,
Like he didn't just go, yeah, it's basically every RPG you play.
yeah. It's interesting element where he gains power by eating other monsters, so he literally has to grind to get to the next level. Hmm.
Yep. But so that's kind of like where it comes from, why it's so popular, and what it is. And like we are saying, it's like I think the biggest thing is just there's no conflict here. I can't tell you how many isekai that you read like, oh wow, so he's a guy who again, like in another world with my smartphone. That should be an awesome idea, because if the only thing you give this guy to go to this alternate world is a magic smartphone, that's a resource that can be stolen from him. That's a resource that he has to be clever to actually make use of.
Mm-hmm.
That's something where maybe maybe he ends up and maybe he becomes oh, like you could do a thing where, oh, the court magician died unexpectedly, but he shows up with this smartphone and they think it's so wondrous that they make him the new court magician, and he has to like fend off rival claimants who have real magic
Yeah.
using things that he found out with his smartphone.
Yeah.
Well,
But
like
then they went and made him overpowered.
then they went and made him overpowered. He kept throwing waifus at him instead of actually developing a plot. and I would be surprised if I don't write an isekai at some point, because Magpie Wizard started for me reading. Well, I've talked about this before, where before isekai dominated, everybody was like, "What if Harry Potter, but it was a harem series and it was more military?"
Yeah.
But there's like 4 or 5 anime like that.
Mhm.
But then isekai blew up, and that's what everybody shifted over to. Like, Vampire Wizard came up because I watched a few of those shows and went, none of these are quite scratching the itch. How would I do it? If
Yeah.
I could very easily see myself making an isekai if I could come up with an angle that hasn't really been done. Which, guy's a vending machine. What can I do?
Yeah. Yeah, I was just I've been thinking of different like scenarios in my head of an isekai, and I'm sure they've all been done, or very variations of them have been done, and yeah.
Yeah. Which yeah, like I think it's just what isekai almost needs is just for some real writers to play in it, which which sounds mean, but imagine if oh, I'm trying to think of a real American. Um, this is a bad example because James Patterson is almost more of like a everything is ghost written anymore. But
Hmm.
James Patterson. But imagine if James Patterson he's ghost written manga before, so it's not entirely unreasonable that he would go, well, this isekai thing with this popular with the kids. Let's make a faux anime light novel. We can hire a real Japanese artist and everything.
Right.
Like, imagine an author who thought in terms of conflict and story structure and character arcs, tackled the genre. That would kick out a lot of the existing stuff.
Yeah. Can you imagine if Michael Crichton had written an isekai story?
He, well, actually, no. The one where he went back in time in France doesn't necessarily count.
No, no, that one. Yeah, timeline.
Yeah,
Yeah.
close, but no cigar.
Yeah.
But yeah, although let's kind of tie into that question that D Rhino asked at the
Yes.
528 mark. So, do you believe isekai will one day go away because it has been overused too much that'll be considered lazy writing? Well, first off, I'd say it's already probably considered lazy writing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's already hit that point. I mean, yeah, like like we've just been talking about. I mean, we had one about a vending machine.
A sentient vending machine who can only speak in pre-programmed phases
Yes.
and is carried around by a super strong cat girl. I wish I was making this up. Because not only did somebody write that, somebody wrote that and posted online. Somebody wrote that and posted online, and then wasn't laughed off the internet. A publisher said, "Hey, we noticed that people didn't laugh you off of the." Oh, hi, Russian bot. Anyways,
Hi, Russian
uh,
guy.
we know, and we noticed that people didn't laugh you off of the online or off of the internet. Let's publish that.
Yes.
I'd say the biggest sense of taste is that it was only released, as far as I'm aware, as a digital in the U.S., which basically means not a lot of faith in it doing well over here. It was the rights were probably purchased in a block with a bunch of other series by the same publisher.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, oh, you want to buy this story? Well, you're gonna have to have this story with the vending machine. What?
Yeah, that's actually apparently really common in anime distribution deals. It's actually part of what killed ADV Films back in the 2000s was that um, it's like if you ever looked at like their anime output, you would have series like Evangelion that people would actually buy, and then they would come out with a remastered edition and they would buy it again. It's like, oh, HD DVD. They probably never came out with HD DVD because nobody did HD DVD. But it's like uh, oh,
I did. I
you're
did.
the first person I've met who actually had HD DVD.
I had an HD DVD. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, but yeah, it's like we came out with VHS editions of Evangelion, and now we'll come out with DVD editions. And, oh, now it's a special collector's edition with an Asuka plushie, and like, they could spin money out of that forever.
Hmm.
But the trouble is, like the people who own the rights to Evangelion would go, well, you did that. We have the rights to these failed uh, OVAs from the 80s and 90s. And if you want Evangelion, you're going to have to buy the rights, and we're going to insist that you publish them for like 10 other failed movies.
Yes. Uh, yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, it's basically already seen as like lazy writing.
Hmm.
But I think the issue is that it scratches an itch. It's like, even if it isn't like, I think that if we were to come out with an isekai story that, had the main character have severe disadvantages, have real interpersonal conflicts, and not just have things go conveniently well for him, you might have people revolt and go like, that isn't what this story is for.
Yeah.
Like Richard Meyer always says, nobody would, buy, when he talks about how American comics, like, they take superhero genre and try to write slice of life, nobody's going to take, a Roma, nobody's going to like go, you know what, uh, we're going to buy Sex in the City. We're going to make the male version where there's car chases every episode.
It will be produced by Michael Bay.
Yes, Michael Bay's Sex in the City. The first 5 minutes of every episode is just one of course, they wouldn't be in their 40s and 50s. They'd be like hot 20 somethings.
Oh yeah,
And actually,
yeah.
that sounds like hmm. I don't know that I'm entirely opposed to this show existing.
Yeah, I was just thinking that too. Like, it's not a bad idea.
Yeah, but but anyway, so I think that the therapeutic aspect of it, like the wish fulfillment, therapeutic, you know, like a really shocking story would well be shocking.
Mhm.
So it might fail with the actual demographic, and then you'd have the problem of, well, if but and then the non-core demographic would go, "Ugh, another goddamn isekai series, seriously?
Mm.
No, thank you." So it's almost like a bubble around it. It's like a semi-permeable bubble where like the walls of a cell that keeps out people who wouldn't already be interested in what the genre is.
Yeah,
But if you try to introduce a foreign body into it, it might get expelled.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think like any genre, you can go too far with it, or it can become oversaturated, and then you uh, get people who get burned out on it, and
Hmm.
then eventually kind of like either like we were saying, either bring in competent writers to do it, or just kind of tone back the number of stories for a while, and then just let it let it kind of simmer.
Right. And I think it's going to be with us forever, just because even i- uh, part of it is that there have been a lot of awful series that have come out under that banner, but there are some really series that, like I said, Shield Hero is the Citizen Kane. I haven't seen an isekai that's technically better than it. Konosuba skewers the genre really nicely.
Hmm.
Or maybe they did. I wouldn't even necessarily call it as genre skewering. It's more just, what if an isekai was funny?
Hmm.
And like, both of those series have a lot of interpersonal conflicts. They have, I'd say that Shield Hero has a point more
Hmm.
than any other one I've seen, which is why keep calling it the Citizen Kane.
Yeah.
But I think it's just a genre that's fundamentally broken, and it's kind of fundamentally broken from a storytelling perspective by design.
Yeah.
It's like, you're not going to have a Harlequin romance where the guy and the girl don't get together at the end usually.
Hmm. Yeah, and and I would also say too, it you kind of have to find a way, like, to I hate to say it, but maybe thing you could do is have not one but two characters getting pulled into this fantasy world, and then maybe have like one of them be the hero, then one of them be the villain.
Yeah, that would be a, and like maybe have them be like best friends in advance.
Hmm.
I think that has been done, but it hasn't been done often. Because I think it's like part of the therapeutic thing is the isekai worlds. I leave everything behind.
Right.
That's also why you often have the people who go over be lonely losers who nobody would miss, and they don't miss anybody.
Mm.
Like you think about Shield Hero, even at the I he would often be very down on things because he was done dirty. But it's not like he
Hmm.
spent all of his time fantasizing about the old world, because it wasn't like he was leaving a wife and kids behind.
Right.
His overall goal was to return someday because that was kind of the promise was, hey, if you defeat this great threat, then you'll be sent home.
Hmm.
But it's not like that's the other, like I've actually asked about that before. It's like, hey, how about a gamelet story where the person actually has something they left behind and they're trying desperately to get back and they miss something? Like, no, no, that's not that's not done. That's
Yeah.
like the readers would think they were just big complainers and hate them.
Yeah. The closest example I can think of too would be with the anime villainous series, where it's
Mhm.
implied that one of the characters was reincarnated as her best friend from her old life.
Mhm.
Is one of her friends in the video game.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Which shows you how deeply tied to the conflict of the series it was.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that your idea of having two people isekai'd on different sides of a conflict has a lot of potential, because
Hmm.
there is like an unstated thing, like, oh, actually there are series that violate this, but it's like almost an unstated rule that, well, whatever good kingdom with good looking fantasy characters that you land in is the one that you're going to back.
Hmm.
It's like, well, what if it turns out the elves are the bad guys and the orcs are indigenous peoples who are being driven off their land? It's quote unquote woke storytelling, but it would actually be a subversion, and or it'd be like a turning a genre idea on its head a little bit and having some fun with it,
Yeah.
and you would have conflict.
Yes.
You could be like, I was brought. I was brought in to help. I actually kind of a variant of the title that D. Rhino was mentioning. Uh, I was brought in to help the elves, but the orcs were actually nicer people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're getting near the end. If anyone has any other questions for us, feel
Yes.
free to ask.
As you could tell, this is a topic I thought of for a while because like isekai is like I keep wanting to like them more than I do. And
Hmm.
it makes it so special when there's one I can really sink my teeth into. Then I go, why aren't they all at least like this level of competence? Shield Hero should like realistically be an average isekai.
Yeah. Yeah. Shield Hero should be the benchmark for all the other isekais out there. Yeah.
Right? It should be like, oh man, Shield Hero is like your baseline hit, and then this one was a double, and this one was a triple, this one's a home run. No, but no, like Shield Hero is the home run. It's the grand slam.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's not perfect. It has issues, but man, it's so
Yeah.
much better.
Yeah.
Also, Raftalia is best
Rough
girl.
time.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
uh, one of my small collection.
Yeah. Yes, I've wanted to do some collecting myself.
Well, now that you've moved, you
I
kind of have
got
an excuse.
space. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, if no one else has any other questions for us, I guess we can call it good for the. Oh, hey, Ninja Toe. Good to see you.
tends to be how the MC solves situation rather than being tense. Is that correct? So that's okay. So that's a good question.
Yeah.
I guess it could be that. Okay, so now we do have some questions to answer. So let's do
Okay,
this.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so it
So
tends to be how the MC solves the situation rather than being tense. So Ninja Tail, you're saying it's kind of you'd say it's more like, oh well, the hero has these talents and they've been dropped into the situation. You know they're going to solve the situation, but how?
uh,
The problem is like a lot of these series, at least the ones that I've seen, the hero is so fundamentally overpowered that it is like somebody just leveled up their character too much and it went back to fight the early dungeons again.
yeah.
So it's like it's very rarely a clever solution. It tends to be more like just an overpowered solution.
Yeah, I would tend to agree.
Like
Yeah,
even in the villainous one, she's never really in super danger.
yeah, only slightly near the end.
Hmm.
But other than but yeah, it's usually she's really not. Yeah, because like we were saying, she's changed the situation from everybody hating her to everybody loving her.
Everybody loving her to varying degrees.
Yes. Um, and do you I know what world do we want to be isekai into? So
Hmm.
I mentioned Mass Effect, although the problem with Mass Effect is, of course, the giant sentient machines that come and wipe out the galaxy.
Yes.
Um, that would be a problem. Another one I would probably say is Final Fantasy VII, because Tifa.
I guess it's also like a question of would you be isekai as yourself and just a normie, or would you get the new game plus version of you that like other series get, or would you be an actual character?
Yeah,
Like I could tell you that if I had Tifa to look after me, I would not be sitting around moping about Eris
yeah,
or Aerith, excuse me.
Aerith. Yeah,
Uh,
no,
like
yeah.
I would never get to the point of Advent Children.
Yes.
But serious answer, I guess part of it is that most isekai series, or most series that you could isekai into, you're kind of seeing like the most exciting moments of them.
Hmm.
And being a normal schlub in some of those worlds wouldn't be very much fun. But on the flip side, I might actually choose Konosuba just because it has like a pretty well thought out world. So does Death March to the World of Rhapsody. Either one of those, they the the worlds aren't like on the brink of complete collapse and awfulness,
Hmm.
and they both have like a level up system that you could grind with and eventually become powerful. Or Konosuba, if you have the right small cantrips and things like that, you can make a big impact.
Mm.
So I think that'll be my choices. It's like, okay, do I think that I have a chance of scoring with with darkness or in Konosuba, or do I just go, yeah, I'm just gonna go for a non-ridiculous world? Actually, Konosuba is out of court because in that world the vegetables are sentient and try to fight back. So
Oh yeah, yeah,
yeah. I don't feel like having to fight cabbage. Sorry.
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, World's Finest Assassin.
Not actually familiar with that one.
I'm not either. I'll have to look that one up. But uh, but yeah. All right. Well, this was fun as always.
Yep.
Great, great topic, great discussion. Uh,
Well, great monologue and Daniel putting up with me talking a lot.
uh,
Uh, but yeah, uh, hey, I'm kidding. I know I tend to talk too much in these, so I always
no,
want
no,
to.
it's fine. I tend not to talk that much, so it all kind of balances out. um, but yeah, thank you all for watching. We really appreciate it. As always, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, hit the bell, all that good stuff, and yeah,
Mhm.
and we will see you all next week. So good night, everybody.
Good night.